Hey, Diana, did you know you can easily double your revenue in 3 years?
Mark, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said.
Ladies and gentlemen, jurists and just curious, welcome to the Successful Barrister Podcast. Here you'll learn about marketing, management, and life skills for lawyers that probably won't get you disbarred. Hosted by Marc Whitehead, a seasoned lawyer who remembers when fax machines were cutting edge, and Diana Berry, attorney, COO, and the brains behind the scenes. Together, they are the legal world's most dynamic duo since statutes met regulations. So if you're looking to build a practice, not a prison, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful Barrister, where legal legends are made.
All right, welcome to the Successful Barrister Podcast, the podcast for lawyers about marketing, management, and life skills that probably won't get you disbarred. I'm Marc Whitehead, your host, along with my co-host and COO of my law firm, Diana Berry. Hey, Diana.
Hey, Mark.
So, Diana, what are we going to talk about today?
Doubling your revenue, I think.
Okay. So, specifically, we're going to talk about what I call the 8 levers of profitability. And the origin story about this concept comes from what I call the gateway drug to Atticus, atticusonline.com for those who don't know anything about it, which is a one-day workshop. Used to be 2 days. It's now a one-day workshop where you go over what basically are the 8 levers of profitability in order to come up with a plan to double your revenue, hopefully over the next 3, sometimes 4, sometimes 5 years. I will say I've done this workshop 3 times. And the reason you can do this workshop over and over again is it's not a lecture. It is a thinking process. It is a guided, assisted thinking workshop. I've done it twice live, and then you and I actually did it together during the pandemic.
This is my entree into Atticus.
Right. So I think we had to do that one virtually, sadly. But so what I wanted to talk to today was basically sort of the process and some of the results that we came up with during our joint session with Double Your Revenue, which I'm going to guess was in 2021.
That sounds about right. I was
Sounds
late fall.
probably springish of 2021. I've actually taught the Double Your Revenue
I
workshop.
didn't know that, actually.
Yes, so I taught it one time with Denise. She now goes by Collins, Denise Collins. So I have kind of an interesting perspective because I got to see all the cliff notes behind the scenes that they give the instructor, the teaching guide that they give the instructors on how to walk everybody through the process. But really, it's when I first did it, it was 2 days long. And I think at the time they had about 14 to 16 different levers of profitability that they went over. And I still have my notes from the first time I took it, which was in 2010. And then Steve Riley told me that they decided to shorten it to a one-day program, and they picked the best of the best, and they shortened it down to 8. And as I went back and looked over my notes, I go, yeah, that kind of made sense because some of those they were kind of reaching. So today, what I want to do is you and I are just going to do sort of a debrief on our Double Your Revenue workshop that we did again in 2001, and then we're going to talk a little bit about, since we now have 2, 3, working on 4 years, kind of how has that worked out for us over the last 3 or 4 years. So I will say this. The first time I did Double Your Revenue, I did exactly that. I doubled the revenue of the firm within 3 years. So from 2010 to roughly 2013, 2014. And I managed to do it. Of course, it all depends on where you start from.
Yeah.
You know, what's the bar that you're starting from. I did it again, I want to say in 2015, 16. And again, I think we got pretty close to doubling our revenue within 3 or 4 years. And now we are in, I would say, year 4 since the last one. To be honest, I don't think we've doubled our revenue in the last 4 years, but we have dramatically increased it.
Absolutely.
So, you know, the more times you do this, the harder it is to keep doing it over and over again, but that doesn't mean you got to quit trying. So anyway, with that, so we're going to go through the 8 levers of profitability as derived from the Double Your Revenue workshop. And we're going to do this right after the break.
This podcast is sponsored by Marc Whitehead Associates, a national disability benefits law firm. Marc Whitehead runs a firm of over 60 dedicated people whose mission is to make a difference in the lives of our injured and disabled clients. Marc represents disabled claimants in Social Security disability, private disability insurance, and veterans disability claims in all 50 states. Marc Whitehead is double board certified in both Social Security disability law and personal injury trial law. Marc has litigated disability cases in over 40 states and counting and can help your clients too. Stop throwing your phone calls away. Call Marc Whitehead at 701-VIP-LEAD. That's 701-VIP-LEAD. Or visit our website at disabilitydenials.com. Referral fees are paid in all jurisdictions where it is permitted. Refer us your disability cases today and know that your clients will be in good hands.
And we're back. All right, Diana, I want to get your feedback from this. So Double Your Revenue was probably within the first 6 months of you coming to work for the firm. What do you remember about it? What struck you when we went through that program together?
That was a long time ago, Mark. And so, yeah, that one, you can throw me under the bus on that one.
I am totally throwing you under the bus.
I will say that the biggest takeaway from that session, which is still the one thing that we carry through to our attorneys and we've tried to teach them, was that they have this stair step thing that you do. Like, so you start at the bottom of the mountain and then, you get to the top where you have this great practice, great life. And that a great lawyer was not the summit. Like, that's the great lawyer was the top, was just kind of in the middle. And I always thought that, hey, of course, this was before I was a COO, so I was always an attorney. Now I don't carry a docket, obviously, so I identify more as a COO than I do as an attorney. But being a great lawyer, I thought was always the goal. And this was basically saying, nope, it's not. That was the first time I'd really thought about being a business owner and being a lawyer at the same time.
So that's the first concept that's introduced in the workshop is being a great lawyer is not the end goal. And quite frankly, being a great lawyer can be a trap.
Yeah.
It can be the thing that weighs you down when you're trying to build your business. And as I repeatedly remind all of my coaching clients, we are in the business of law, okay? And we need to recognize that. We're trying to build law firms that are self-sustaining, that will allow us the freedom to do what we want in our life. We are trying to build a practice and not a prison.
Yep.
And when you get stuck in the great lawyer mindset, meaning that I've got to do everything, I've got to try the cases, I've got to do all the depositions, I've got to do all the mediations, I've got to close all the contracts and make all the sales. When you think like that, I'm a great lawyer, I've got to do it all, you have basically built yourself a prison.
Yep. And we're going to talk about that. Those basically one or two of the levers that we're going to talk about of the 8 today.
Yes, we are. So let's get right to it. So the first 2 that we're going to talk about, I think are kind of 2 sides of the same coin, but they are different concepts. So the very first thing in the very first lever of increasing your profitability is, number 1, you need to increase the average fee per case. In other words, increase your case values. How do you do that? That really depends on what your business model is. Are you a contingency fee firm? Are you a flat fee or bundled service type firm? Are you an hourly type firm? We are a contingency fee firm. And not only are we a contingency fee firm, we are a contingency fee firm that is subject to fee caps because most of our cases are against a government entity. Therefore, we have federal caps on the fees that we are able to charge. So the very first question is, how in the hell can you raise your average fee per case when you are in that type of environment?
Well, one of the first things that I think about, and these are different from your talking points, but we talk a lot about our C-level clients or your C-level employees and those types of things. And so I think a lot about the clients that perhaps where we're just not a good fit. As it turns out, as a relationship continues, we're just not a good fit for them. And for many reasons, we decided to part ways because you only really have hopefully 40 hours per team member each week. Where are you going to, as we grow our practice, where are your team members spending their time?
Right. So you want your team members spending their time on the most valuable cases, which kind of goes back to how do you increase your average fee per case? So when you're in a contingency fee world, with
Time on
ECAPs,
desk.
exactly, time on desk matters. So, but specifically, take better cases. And the corollary is to don't take poor cases.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the tools that we learn is to grade our cases: A cases, B cases, C cases, and D cases. You know, sign the A's, sign the B's, refer out the C's, and just totally reject the D's. And there's multiple facets to that. Number one, is it going to be a high value case? Is it going to be a case that is going to take a tremendous amount of time on desk? Is it going to be a case that takes a tremendous amount of your labor and resources, relative to what the fee might be?
Exactly. Sometimes we just deal with an overpayment in our long-term disability practice area, whereas on the other side, just sometimes the facts just aren't there to support the claim, as tragic as they may be for some of our clients.
Right. And so what may be an A or B case to you, or let me rephrase that, what might be a C case or a D case to you might be another lawyer's A or B case.
Mm-hmm.
So always understand where you kind of fit in the continuum. So don't feel that you have to take every case that comes in just because it came in. If it doesn't fit your economic model, if it doesn't fit your sensibilities, refer it out. Don't keep those C and D cases just because you think you have to. And that's the quickest and easiest way to raise the average value of each case, to raise your average fee per case. So strategy number 2 is, I think, the other side of that coin, which is to think about your pricing strategies. Okay. So you want to increase the quality of your case, but you also want to get paid more for that case as well. Simplest answer, obviously, if you're an hourly biller, increase your hourly rate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm amazed at the number of extremely experienced lawyers out there that have been around doing this 20, 30 years, that, are board certified and doing, great high quality work. And I ask them, what's your billable hour? Like $350. I'm like, you're kidding me. You're billing yourself out with the experience level that you have at $350 an hour. Okay, go over to what Norton Rose Fulbright or something like that and see what their 20 and 30-year lawyers are billing at. They're billing at $700, $800, maybe $1,000, maybe $1,200 an hour.
Yep.
We as small firm lawyers consistently undervalue our services.
And I do think that's the value of doing the DYR, the double your revenue workshop repeatedly, is that it makes you reevaluate your pricing context.
Right. The other thing first of all, I hate the hourly rate, regardless of what your hourly rate is, as a business model in and of itself, because it doesn't promote using efficiencies in your practice. Consider bundle billing, consider flat fee billing, some sort of hybrid billing strategy, because it promotes being efficient, which will be something that we'll talk about, I think, in one of the next levers of profitability, increasing our efficiency and using technology. But let's say, for example, something, I think it'll take me 4 hours, and I want to bill at $800 an hour, but I can't stomach the $800 an hour, because I don't think anybody would pay me that.
Right.
What if you just took that project and say, I'll do it for a flat fee of $3,000? Okay. It effectively, if you think it's going to take 4 hours of your time, it's the same. It's coming out the same, but it sounds better. I will take your case and finish it from start to finish for $3,000. Okay. Same concept. Okay. Now you can delegate some of that work down, which is going to be another one of our strategies coming up. I'm kind of jumping the shark. But flat fees promote, efficiency in running your law firm. Contingency fees. People think they're stuck at a certain contingency fee. Let me at least run this one past you. Typically, we're charging a third on most cases. Who says you can't charge 35%? Okay. Who says you can't charge 40% in a lot of cases, especially cases that are going to litigation? Why not just charge that up front? So I think there's lots of ways that you can increase the average fee per case, if you just think about it. And there's lots of ways that you can adjust your pricing strategy to help accomplish that, if you think about it. Okay?
Awesome.
What do you think? I'm talking a lot here. I want to hear what you think. Operations person.
I think that, so we did a lot of work this last year on price and context, and there's a lot of ways that you can do that through Atticus. Through our Atticus coaching, we did a lot of work on price and context, and I think that really just made it very clear for me the different ways we price, because we're fee capped in Social Security. VA, there's a general percentage that we're legally allowed to charge, and then with long-term disability, I think that the market, some of our competitors really do help us drive what we do charge.
That's true, but can you differentiate yourself from your competition?
Yeah.
Never get into a fee battle with somebody's trying to undercut your prices. I charge what I charge, and here is why I charge it, and here is why I'm worth it. You have to understand and be able to articulate your value proposition to your client. Why are you worth it? But you can't wing it. You've got to think of that ahead of time. Quite frankly, you got to rehearse it. So, all right. So we went through 2. That is increasing the average fee per case and readjusting your pricing structure. Those were the first 2 levers. So what's the third lever that we're going to talk about?
Strategic delegation, which, as you said, is kind of the one side of the two-sided coin for the fourth lever, which is an all-star team.
All right. So tell us, what is strategic delegation in that operations mind of yours?
So the way that I think about it is, we've talked about this, I think, in a prior podcast, but take all the things that you do. I think it's important. It seems very like I don't have time for this to write down every single thing that I do. But then it's that 4-quadrant, the Eisenhower Matrix that I think we did talk about. And there's so many things that I find that I just should not be doing. And I'm trying to get better about that. We cannot grow this firm if I don't get better at that. And so that's what I think about is what tasks need to be delegated. That's the second part of it. The strategic part of it is making sure that I'm also scaling up the team and the leadership that we have now to be able to, so that they are successful in the tasks that I've been doing for them.
So from a general concept that maybe our listeners can apply. So there should be established for every employee in your firm, including yourself as the owner of the firm or as the managing attorney of a section or any person in the firm. There should be a list of what are the highest and best uses of that person's time. So for me as the owner, the highest and best use of my time is to market the firm, to manage the firm, and to mentor my lawyers, the 3 M's as I call it. The highest and best use of your time as COO is dealing with all operational issues, such as dealing with technology, such as dealing with human resource issues, such as dealing with processes and procedures. For my attorneys, the highest and best use of their time is, number 1, strategic thinking about how to move their cases along quickly and profitably, how to manage their staff to accomplish that goal. For my case managers, the highest and best use of their time is to, number 1, be the frontline communicator with our client, client service aspect, to make sure the files are moving correctly through, say, the Social Security Administration or the VA or whatever division that they happen to be in. The highest and best use for a medical records clerk is to stay on top of their medical records request and make sure that the medical records are coming in. Everybody within the firm has a highest and best use, and you need to make sure you have that clearly defined for each position, and you need to make sure they know it and that they're doing it. And everything that's not the highest and best use of their time needs to get delegated down to the next person down the chain. Presumably, as you move down the chain, each person becomes less expensive in terms of salary, bonuses, compensation package. Therefore, you want to match the value of the task to the cost of the employee.
Yep, and I think that's the EOS tool, Delegate and Elevate, is great for this type of analysis because, particularly in a growing firm, people are absorbing new tasks just due to scale that you don't realize. And so the EOS model encourages us to do the delegate and elevate with our team, I think at least twice a year, so that you realize what they are doing that you may not realize that they have absorbed with the growth of their positions.
Yeah. So matching, I like this real concept. Match the value of the task performed to the cost of the employee that's actually performing it. If you as the attorney are doing the registered mail and licking the stamps, that is not a good use of your time.
Well, and I think the more real one that we have in our firm is expense reports. Like that's one of the things that, I mean, just as a heads up, that's one of the things I want to delegate off of our attorneys in 25. Yes, hopefully I'll be their favorite after this podcast.
Right. All right. So the other side of that coin is, here's our fourth lever of profitability, is to develop an all-star team. That is a team of A players who you can trust to do this delegation too.
Yeah.
You know, that's the problem with delegation. You have to have somebody to delegate to.
Well, someone you trust.
And somebody you trust. If you have nobody, quick aside, I'll tell a story. I was in Atticus. We were in Atticus in the DYM workshop, the summit, this past week. And I was talking to an attorney. She said, I have a nice employment law practice. I'm like, okay, how many employees you have? None. None?
Yeah.
Not one. I asked her, I said, so you lick the stamps, you address the envelopes, you
Answer the phone
you
calls?
answer the phone calls. Yes, I do. I'm like,
Oh.
oh, okay. This person has never developed an all-star team. Therefore, there's no way that they can delegate those tasks down to somebody else. I mean, there's nobody. And I'm like, I very nice person, and I'm sure a very good attorney, but how do you grow a business if you have nobody to delegate those smaller tasks down to?
Well, and I think that to make sure that all of our listeners understand why this is so important.
And I have to be very kind because I told her about my podcast and I actually had her download it. So she may be listening here. We love you. We really do.
Well,
but I really think you need to hire somebody.
Please do hire someone, because to achieve her ultimate end goal, which was, why was she at Summit?
I think actually her end goal was to develop a practice that she could sell.
And so without these systems and people in place, it becomes less of an asset. And I think that brings us full circle as to why this is so important. Yes, it's really cool to double your revenue, but never forget that we're also developing an asset for our families later on down the line, and so on and so forth. So I think that the really cool thing that you started doing probably about 2 years ago within the firm, with our all-star team, was spending monthly lunches with our, what we call our team leaders.
Yes. Team leaders, which I would best describe as sort of our middle level management, our non-attorney managers.
And our right hands to our attorneys for each of their departments.
Right. You know, the old saying, it's the sergeants that run the army. Okay, it's your team leaders that run your law firm.
And in all due respect to our attorneys, we love them too, but that's very true, particularly in our growing firm. And so we work with them on business skills. We've talked about lean and the wastes of lean, and we've talked about the Eisenhower Matrix. So introducing them without making them read a book, right? We don't want to give them a task, but we've kind of set up this own kind of progression of management skills and leadership skills while giving them a team internally to rely on for some of their issues.
And we're talking about our non-attorney managers within the firm, that layer of management that we've developed that sort of, what it really does, it allows our attorneys to do what they do best, which is to work their files, work their cases, maximize the value of their cases. Again, see how this all sort of interplays. How do you increase the maximum or the average fee per case? Well, allow your attorneys to pay attention to their cases and not have to do a bunch of managerial stuff. Again, so 3 and 4, strategic delegation and developing an all-star team, two sides of the same coin. I will say this with developing an all-star team. You can't develop an all-star team unless you've developed all-star processes and procedures for them to follow. Because ultimately, I think that's what Michael Gerber said in E-Myth, which is the way to run a successful, sustainable business. It's about developing processes and systems and then hiring the right people to run those processes and systems. Okay, so it's not just enough to hire somebody. You got to hire the right person, the right seat, and the right bus. You have to give them the processes and the systems, and then on top of that, then you've got to train them on it. You've got to train people how to run your system so they do it consistently and they do it well.
I think that is a very good caveat to this whole, double your revenue is great, but it's an unsustainable growth if you don't have a solid foundation, which you were just talking about. So I think in our next segment, you're going to finish out the 4 levers or the 8.
I want to finish out the 8, giving the second half, coming back for part 2. And we'll come back and talk a little bit about that. And then I want to end up with giving a little bit of pitch to double your revenue, because you don't have to be an Atticus member to go to this. So
No,
we'll talk
they
about how
might
you
not
did that.
either.
So with that, we'll be right back. I'm Marc Whitehead, a lawyer, entrepreneur, and business coach. Thanks so much for tuning into the Successful Barrister podcast. We have a blast creating it, and I hope you find it helpful. If our chats have sparked your interest, I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me an email at mark@markwhitehead.com. That's Mark spelled with a C. Enjoying the Successful Barrister newsletter. Even better, let's hop on a call. I'd love to chat about how we can collaborate, share ideas, or just catch up. All right, Dinah, so we're going to talk about the next 4 on the 8 levers of profitability. And so the next one is right up your alley. So I'm going to let you lead with that, which is technology.
I love technology. I think it's very important. So obviously you can use technology to do more with less. I think that's the basic.
More with less.
More with less.
Okay.
Yes, do more with less. Because the idea behind technology is that you can create scalable processes that are done the same way every time without the, sometimes instability that just happens with humans, right? We're not robots. I think you did this before I got here. You've focused very heavily on technology. We are a paperless firm, which is a huge thing for any law firm, but especially one with 2 governmental practices. The amount of mail we get is crazy on any given day, just from the government. But we're a paperless law firm. So you laid the foundation. And of course, you've also invested in Litify as our case management software, which I think is one of the most robust out there. And it allows us to do very powerful things without really necessarily. We have doubled, for example, actually, over 170% growth in our number of SSD cases since I started, but we have not doubled or even 100. Obviously, we haven't increased the number of personnel on that team, and a lot of that's due to technology.
Right. So to start with, we originally implemented Litify strictly as a lead intake management platform.
Many years ago.
So our intake team began using it, I want to say 16, 18, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
But I resisted initially implementing it fully into our full case management platform. So I took baby steps. And eventually we got used to the Litify system over in intake, but of course it didn't talk to our old case management system, which was sort of antiquated. And for those who can remember what MS-DOS looked like in your old 386 computers, it felt a lot like that. So we finally made the switch right when you got here, right before you got here, and switched over to Litify fully for case management. And what that did, that efficiencies of allowing our intake department process to talk with case management in the case management process and not have to rekey, re-enter, redo all that. Efficiencies just shot up.
Well, it's cloud-based, which I can't emphasize enough. It allowed, obviously, I was, as we all know, a 2020 hire. We all remember what was happening. So it allowed you to move a remote 100% during that time a lot more efficiently than you otherwise could have. And then also now, you certainly didn't have the 11 or 12 offices that we have now at that time. And so it allows us all to look at the same information all the time. And be on, as long as you have an internet.
Yeah, all you need is an internet connection, which sometimes is a little iffy.
This is very true.
But so that allowed us to bring in employees, very good, solid employees from overseas, because they can look, they can be integrated into our system. It allowed us to open up offices around the state with employees that could easily, we could easily look into what they're doing. They can look into the system and see, what needs to be done. It allowed us to really leverage a lot of things And then the second big piece of software, and I know we've talked about this before. I don't want to beat a dead horse sometimes, but we use Case Status as a client portal.
We do.
Tell us about what Case Status does and what it can do for us.
Well, it's a client portal. I think you said that, but we like Case Status because it's an app. So it literally is an app you download from your app store, whichever phone you choose to use. But it's also what we just call the Domino Pizza Tracker, which we think is very important for particularly our Social Security disability cases, because they have such a long lead time. It's because they also just go a long time without any new news. It's a great way to communicate with the client, and there's a lot of science out there about the push notifications that you get from an app versus logging into a portal.
So here's the $24,000 question, which is, it was sold to us as a method for getting clients to call us less. Therefore, our staff members could be more productive because they wouldn't be on the phone so much with clients, because clients wouldn't be calling, asking as many questions. Do you think that's worked?
That's a great question. And I think it's hard to say. Obviously, it's all, I'm going to be a lawyer here and say it's hard to tell because we have grown so much. The caseloads that our current case managers are handling now is so much larger than it was even a year ago. So inherently, the number of calls are just going to go up. So, but what it's not just because you get the Case Status app, you automatically, there's a lot of teaching that you have to do with both the clients as well as your team members on, hey, you know what, I'm on the phone. And that's one of the things that we started messaging a lot more is from our case managers during our onboarding call to our clients is, I'm on the phone all day advocating for clients, your cases like you, trying to make sure that all the bottlenecks are taken out of your system. So please message me through the Case Status app. I can get back to that a lot faster.
So what I hear is you just ducked my question.
I did.
You should be on one of those Sunday morning political shows. The politicians that get there and just totally duck the question.
Well, if the COO thing doesn't work out.
I know. Then you can go into government work. So the real question is, did it lessen the number of calls? Maybe. I think so.
I think so.
But did it allow our case managers to actually take on bigger caseloads?
I think absolutely.
Okay, so there's where your efficiency comes in with using the technology, is that your staff can handle a larger caseload. Therefore, you can bring on more clients and not have to grow the staff, which I think you said earlier.
That is the advantage of technology. And of course, then obviously you increase the number of cases, thus doubling your revenue. I think before we leave technology, we would be remiss to not mention AI, which is an obvious technology. We've played in various different AI options out there. Obviously, you just invested in, you just purchased co-counsel for the firm, and we're excited to see about that. But
so co-counsel, for those that don't know, is the Westlaw AI product, which, one of the big things that scares lawyers about AI is the phantom results. Everybody's heard about the lawyers who've gotten sanctioned because they used AI to write a summary judgment response, and it came up with
hallucinations.
And came up with fake case law and all that fun stuff. So according to Westlaw, that cannot possibly happen because it can only use data within the Westlaw database, which of course is the standard that we've all used, since law school.
Exactly.
So I will say
it's closed.
It's a closed system.
You can literally upload your own privileged information and not have it worry about going out into the universe.
Right. So the way we've done it is we've uploaded standard templates that we like to use, and like, hey, this is what we would sort of like the results to look like. And I will be the first to acknowledge that I have not used this much, because since I don't handle cases on a day-to-day basis, I don't need to use it so much, but I have played with it. And I've tested it. I've asked it some obvious questions that I knew the answers to already to see what kind of product it would spit out. And so far, it hasn't led me astray. I haven't gone any further with that than it. So I would love to hear what my lawyers think about it. So this is a relatively new platform, but.
Well, and I think that the best advice that I ever got with AI as a lawyer was the 10-90-10, and then to treat it like a legal assistant. You'd have to do the 10% up front to make sure it's guided correctly, the prompt work. And
AI is all about putting the right prompt in.
And then the 90% is the AI, and then the 10% is vetting it and making sure it's right. So and just treat it like a legal assistant. Make sure you're not just trusting it with what it is.
Right. Don't ever trust it. Trust but verify.
But I think the fifth lever is a really good one to kind of...
we're switching here. Okay.
Well, I mean, do you have more to say on technology?
All I was going to say is now the last piece of technology that we've implemented a new phone system, which I, for the life of me, do not yet understand, but I hear it's supposed to be so much better.
It really is. And so I'm still, that was a tough implementation. So we're not going to name that vendor, but it was a tough internal implementation, but it is much better. It came with some AI components again. And again, it just allowed us to scale. It's going to allow us to scale a lot more efficiently in the future.
What other piece of technology have I missed? You know better than I do. Did I miss anything?
Well, I'm very excited about what we're going to do in December, but we can talk about it after that implementation, I guess. Our new communications vendor in Litify.
I know nothing about this. This is why you're here, to fill in the gaps, because I don't know what that is.
Well, we just signed a contract with Banjax, Conversations by Banjax, and so it's going to allow us to put all of our communications into one easy stream, and so really excited about that because obviously, I think the one thing that I can say about technology is that we all thought that it was going to, as you said, allow us to maybe do not less customer service, but allow us to do the tasks more that Litify tells us to do. And what really has made it much more important, for me anyway, is that technology actually allows us to do more customer service, more people work. And we're just trying to use the technology to make the task work more efficient for our team members.
Okay. All right.
Which is a great segue into the fifth lever.
Okay, which is?
Focus management efficiencies.
So originally, this was called time management, but as has been pointed out to me on numerous times, you cannot manage your time. You can only manage yourself. Time stands still for no one. So really what we're talking about is focusing on the most important tasks. Mm-hmm. Which again kind of goes back to strategic delegation. So focus on the tasks that are important that only you can do, that you do well, and delegate or defer the tasks that are not that important, that don't move the needle. So again, my focus, and I have gotten into the weeds on a lot of stuff that I probably never should have gotten into, that really distracted my focus. And what I realized is that the highest and best use of my focused time would be to work on marketing, to be working on management, particularly management structure, not the day-to-day management, but more the overall structure. And then obviously to mentor my lawyers, to help them, to give them my 32 years worth of experience, and train them up to be as good as they could possibly be in their profession. But when I think of that, I think of focus management is, quite frankly, what it really comes down to is being a good leader.
Yeah, one of the books, and I forget which one, but they talk a lot about the whirlwind. And for me, that's what I think about every time I think about focus management. There will always be an unread email. There will always be something demanding your time. But really moving the big things forward, that's where focus really comes into play. I think, and I've said this countless times to both you and to our lawyers, I think the saddest thing that I've seen, I think I'm a 18-year attorney now, over time is when you're either complaining about or talking about the same problem a year later that you were talking about the year before, right? Whether it's the same 10 pounds you want to lose, or whether it's, I just can't manage my calendar, or the same team member that you just can't get the efficiencies you want out of. And the only way you get rid of those types of things, those big projects, is by scheduling them into focus management.
So focus management, in my opinion, begins with scheduling think time.
Yeah.
You have to have time to think. Not to do, but you just need to have time set aside to think, and strategically think about the direction that you want to take the firm, the practice, whatever it is that you're in charge of. But you need to just sit and think. And sometimes this can be, you need 30 minutes. Sometimes you need a couple of hours. Sometimes you need a whole day. The clarity breaks. Yes, thank you. The clarity breaks. You need to take time and have some clarity breaks to get all of the minutia out of your head and think strategically about where you want to go, how you're going to get there, what obstacles might be in the way, and how might you get around those obstacles, and really plan out the roadmap of where you want to be in a year from now, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years.
Yeah, I think EOS says that that time is to work on the business rather than in the business. And I love my think time. I schedule 90
I think it's a
minutes.
little higher than that.
Well, that's probably
And
okay.
I know, okay, this is me being a snob, but I've heard, work on the business, not in the business so many times that it's almost become a little trite in my head. I think you need to even be a little higher than that. You need to work on your life.
Oh, absolutely. That's where I was going with it. So I have a 90-minute think time exercise blocked. And about this time of the year, I will also, actually, I'll do it in my December think time. I'll schedule out next year's think time for every month. And during that 90-minute block, that I work literally on my life. So I look at my 24 or my year goals, my quarter goals are a subset of my yearly goals, my great life idea, and then also where I think about the business. Like, am I moving everything forward? And I schedule out for that month anything that's not moving forward. I make sure I schedule, because then if I have something on my calendar, I know I absolutely, even if I'm not prepared for it at that moment, if I put something on my calendar for 2 weeks from then, I know that I'll address it and be prepared for it at that time.
Absolutely. Calendar your biggest projects.
Yeah, or else they will never
Or
happen.
else they'll never happen.
So what you got for the last two, Mark?
All right. So marketing. Now, so this one's near and dear to my heart. It doesn't matter how great of a law firm you build. If you don't have any clients to serve, what's the point? And a lot of people would put this number one. Okay. I specifically did not put it number one because you need to have some form of infrastructure in place so you do good quality work, before you're really thinking about marketing. But really, it kind of goes, it's kind of obvious. You can't do any of the things that we've talked about if you can't generate good clients, good paying clients. So we've talked about this in the past, but I have found through my experience in my own firm and through coaching other law firms, the three biggest drivers of quality cases tend to be, and may not work for every firm, but in our firm and in many firms that I've looked at, tend to be, number one, referrals from other professionals, in our case, lawyers, referrals from your client base or your people be friends from high school. I kind of include them all in that database. And then your digital presence, because that's where people go to look these days for lawyers. They go online and they type in Social Security disability lawyer near me, or best VA lawyer or something like that. Those are the three core foundational elements, I think, the low-hanging fruit in any marketing plan. But then you can go beyond that. Obviously, you can go through paid advertising of various sorts, whether it's pay-per-click, whether it's television, radio, print, direct mail. There's a million ways to draw attention to yourself.
Well, and I think the double your revenue, all those different ways become more of an option as you continue to grow your firm, right? So TV probably wasn't in the budget the first time you looked at the DYR session or did the DYR workshop, but each of these different streams became more of an option as you grew your firm.
Right. As your revenue goes, your options grow. So with that, I will plug my marketing template and marketing plan that I give away for free. Just email me at marc@marcwhitehead.com. Marc spelled with a C. I will email it to you in Word format so you can make it your own and delete what you don't like and keep what you do like. But you can't market by accident. You need a plan.
You be intentional about it.
I used to hate this. I'll tell a war story. Back in the day, 20, 30 years ago, you'd go to these seminars where you have some big shot lawyer talking about how he had become so successful and how he got all the great cases. And they'd do one of two things. They'd either come up and say, do great work and the business will come, which I do not believe is true. Or they would say, I was in a supermarket and I gave somebody my card and the next thing you know, they brought me $1 million case. Okay. You can't market by dumb luck. Okay. You have to be consistent and persistent in your marketing efforts, and you have to have a plan. And I used to hate going to seminars like that. Because I just felt like they're just lying to me. They've got something going on. They're just not telling me the truth.
Well, and even if they did get done, look, that's not very helpful
that's
for
the
them.
It's not very helpful.
topic.
It was and what it was is they just didn't want to tell. They had something going and they didn't want to give up the ghost. The reality is it's not really that complicated. You work your 3 foundational principles like I just laid out, and then you find the other things that you layer on top of that. And get the marketing plan, marketmarkwhitehead.com, and we can discuss that. All right, the last one, implementation.
I like this one.
So this is your strike zone. You are the implementer. This is actually
that's literally
your title. The EOS system. I'm the visionary, and you're the
implementer.
Integrator. So tell us about that.
Well, I think that the best way we can do that is by an example. So you take me on, not all, I don't go to MTMP, but on nearly all of your conferences. You go to PILMA. I missed a PILMA this year, but I go to all your Atticus, and I appreciate the investment that you make into my career. But I quickly realized that the reason why you take me is because you sit there and you just think, and I sit there and take copious notes, and I have papers everywhere, and each paper means a different thing, and I'll be writing all these notes, and you look over and you're like, what are you writing about? And because each thing is just an idea, but also my ideas then come back and we start plugging them into quarters. So when we do our 25, 26 business plan, some of the ideas that I was writing last week at Atticus will then go into a business plan, which I think sometimes visionaries don't do a good job of.
Right. And my job as the visionary is to come up with 1,000 ideas, and your job is to either execute on those ideas or to tell me why they won't work.
Well, to put them into a place, right?
Right.
Like, I think it's like TV, the TV analogy, to carry that through. It's like, we may not be able to do that at 25 because we have more low-hanging fruit that we can easily execute on. And then that goes into the 26 plan. But you must have, I think, someone who is making sure that your ideas go somewhere.
Yeah. So, and like I said, it's really about implementation and execution. I mean, you can have a ton of great ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't get implemented into your system, if your follow through, if your execution is poor, that is where most businesses fail. Most businesses that are out there, they have great ideas, but they fail in the execution of their ideas. So we use the EOS system, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, which is based off of the book Traction. Traction is simply another word for execution.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my favorite tools within the EOS system is the fact that we have level 10 meetings at the firm-wide level, and then we have level 10 meetings within each division of the firm. So we have what I would call sub-level 10s. And the whole purpose of that is to increase what they would call traction, what I would call execution or implementation throughout the firm. It's not enough that I come back with a great idea. That great idea now needs to be implemented into the firm plan, and then executed upon. And it has to filter down throughout the whole firm. So whatever system you want to call. I know Scaling Up has different terminology. I know there's a bunch of different business systems out there. They all have different languages, but the basic premise is that you have to have a way to filter ideas and instructions down throughout the core business in order to get them implemented into the firm.
And I think, the whole idea of meeting pulse, which is EOS speak again, meeting cadence is another way to put that, isn't unique to EOS, obviously, but the way that they encourage accountability is because it is very, I think, just very beautiful in its simplicity. So, and whether you're at the size, whether you have obviously I'm the COO of the firm. We have a lot of cousins that have team leaders, just someone who is both a paralegal and a team leader of a smaller firm, someone who's just overseeing things until you can actually get a dedicated person whose only job is implementation.
So with that, I think what we'll wrap up with is just kind of a final little plug for the Double Your Revenue workshop. And I want to emphasize again, it's a workshop, not a seminar. through Atticus. You can go to atticusadvantage.com. I assume we can put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
To see when they're scheduled. But as I say, it's the gateway drug to Atticus. And again, I admit it, I'm an employee of Atticus. But I don't get paid for the W revenue unless I'm.
And you're not getting a kickback.
So I'm not getting a kickback
from the
on
plug.
it, for the plug. But I do think it is a great workshop. Again, I've done it 3 times and taught it once. So I mean, I can speak that every time I've gone, my perspective has changed. I've learned new things about what to do, what not to do, kind of enhanced my vision each time I went. So would entirely recommend it to anybody. If anyone wants to talk to me about it, I'd be happy to have a conversation with you at marc@marcwhitehead.com. Anyway, with that, I'm getting the high sign that we're out of time. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast, where legal legends are made. I'm Marc.
And I'm Diana.
And together we're the dynamic duo of law. Remember to rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you've enjoyed this, tell your friends. Let's try to get the listenership up. And visit us at successfulbarrister.com. And be sure to visit our sponsor, Marc Whitehead Associates, a national disability law firm, at disabilitydenials.com. And with that, we're out of here.
Bye.